Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I was diagnosed as schizophrenic at 24 and now 26. On the onset, I was smoking a lot of Delta-8 bodega weed daily and spent 14 days unmedicated in my first psychosis state. The main delusions that were my own were that my mind was broadcasting information and other people were unknowingly answering my thoughts and that I was in a simulation. I also, when in psychotic states, am very gullible, so I picked up on very religious and supernatural delusions that anyone else in my psych ward would talk to me about. The meds make me feel empty, so I went about 8 months without them, just losing my marbles locked up in my apartment. Primarily having tactile and auditory hallucinations, thinking weird shit like the neighbors were performing surgery on a quantum-entangled clone of me in the apartment next door, which I could feel and hear them talking about. At one point in time, the neighbors who seemingly could directly read my mind and answer my questions said, "This is not a game and get help," which only made me want help less and become more paranoid. I also persistently felt snakes in my body and head during this time. After quitting my job and going to the hospital, I refused medication again but lost to a court order for 1 year of meds and therapy. But other than the meds, I've gotten nothing out of it, and am still quite insane, and plan to go back off meds eventually. Making a thread just to see if anyone wants to share psychosis schizo stories, because this shit still feels like a game to me. And I don't know how to win, but I have fun playing. If anyone has other info to share or rabbit holes I could read up on, please feel free.
Psychosis sufferer here. I loved being in psychosis, don't get me wrong. There were parts that were bad, but for the most part I have never felt so free or happy. I didn't give a shit what anyone thought about me, and I told everyone I could find every truth I was discovering. I am meant to be on meds, but stopped taking mine in February, because at the end of the day, as long as I can hold my shit together, I don't really see why it matters what I believe. Pretty much everything I was spouting in psychosis, I already believed before, and I'm not going to stop believing just because a doctor tells me I should. I just keep it all on the down low now. I share with the people I can, but I know that's as far as I can ever really take it. I believe that psychosis is a very spiritual state, and I think it is deemed too much of a threat to the Western establishment, so they just throw us in the loony bin. That's why I'm a covert psychosis person now. If I was to tell the psychiatrist my views haven't changed, even though I'm doing great, they'd hospitalize me. I hope one day there is a better way to help people going through psychosis and schizophrenia, because right now the system is designed to destroy us.
Yeah, for the most part I enjoyed it as well. Kinda like bipolar without the depression, just constant mania. But after a long enough period without sleep, my hallucinations would be all-encompassing, and I got them for every sense except taste pretty regularly. The meds just make me depressed pretty much. I'm just sleepy and lazy. I imagine I'll eventually come off them and probably keep something handy in case I fly too far off the rails, but I managed okay compared to most, I think. And I think I'd only get more used to it with time.
There is a lot to unpack there, OP. And I don't think /x/ is the best place regarding your mental health, as a lot of posters can be quite hostile here. You're surprisingly lucid for someone with self-reported schizophrenia. But I'm not sure asking for psychosis schizo stories is going to help, as you mentioned. In psychotic states, you are very gullible, and there is a real risk a poster could encourage you to undertake an act that is harmful. If the medication isn't working for you, the best course of action would be to tell the person who is prescribing it that it does not work. If you're currently on the medications now, I would suggest they're working because your post was relatively coherent for someone with schizophrenia. For example, you recognize some beliefs were not entirely realistic. I am not trained to advise on such conditions, but it is evident you are experiencing distress. I would recommend avoiding weed as it actually worsens psychosis in the long run. I am sad to hear you quit your job, and hopefully you can find a new one that better suits. I would strongly recommend visiting a board on another website dedicated to schizophrenia, rather than asking random, anonymous posters who may simply be trolls pretending to be schizophrenic.
Thanks for your concern, but I think I'm able to tell if people are fucking with me at the moment on meds. Just wanted to hear some stories and see if anything was relatable, because I'm more curious about schizophrenia than I am scared of it. I never tried to hurt anyone or myself. Even when I was really bad off, I just got scared and shut down, so I don't think I'm really a danger to anyone.
Hey OP, I got my schizo diagnosis at the age of 24 too, but I'm 38 years old now. Weed was the trigger too, but while taking my meds I can still smoke. Pick related. Report about my psychosis. Also in my experience, it's not about how to win the game, but how to learn to be a good player, so others will want to play with you more ever after. Ironic prelude. When I was 7 years old, my mom had her first psychotic episode, so I already had the question in my heart as a little child about what exactly a psychosis is. Because my mom has the same diagnosis as I do now, and how one's own mommy can change so incredibly fast from one day to the next, what that might be like, and how to explain something like that, had been a big concern for me since I was a little kid. So I became interested in topics like psychology and psychiatry at a relatively early age. Career aspiration, psychiatrist. First psychosis. When I was 24 years old, I had my first psychosis. I was in medical school and on a good path to my desired career, but today I sit at the other end of the table in psychotherapy. First prodromal symptoms had already appeared years earlier, mainly in the form of depression. To counteract this, I employed all the measures that a person sensitive to psychosis should definitely avoid. A lot of mindfulness meditation, a lot of smoking marijuana, and little sleep due to the stress of university exams. So, the onset of psychosis was no wonder. I thought I had achieved enlightenment during meditation. Suddenly, from one day to the next, I could think better, think more clearly, better and clearer than anyone before me. I understood philosophical texts and bought some classics, including Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This book, which no one had ever understood as well as I did, had hidden messages in every line that only I could decipher. So I understood its true message. All those interpreters and experts were completely wrong. The book is a step-by-step guide on how to wake up from reality as a human being and become an enlightened Übermensch, exactly what I am going through right now. I must have written this book myself. That's the only way I can explain my deep understanding of the text. So, I am Nietzsche's Reincarnation, the book that preserves my wisdom about the various reincarnations, so that I can find it again in this new life and absorb my knowledge once more. I start to hear voices, not normal voices audible from the outside, but more like thoughts implanted directly into my brain. So the whole thing feels like telepathy, telling me that I am the chosen one on this planet to awaken others to this experience and save all life on Earth, to establish a heaven on Earth where everyone is awakened to this new reality that I am experiencing right now, to lift the entire reality to a new level of reality, heaven on Earth. I am the Messiah. Funny because 2 weeks earlier I was a lifelong convinced atheist. It's hard to put into words when all of reality, everything you know and love, including your own self and ego, begins to crumble and then ultimately disappears into something for which there are no proper words or concepts yet. Reality itself is collapsing. Everything now has hidden messages that are directly addressed to me. News anchors on TV casually report on my day or what I still have to do. Songs on the radio sing about me and my inner feelings and thoughts. Graffiti on the walls show me the right direction to go. Billboards and street signs become my spiritual guides on this mystical adventure. Even stones, clouds, trees show me the right way and are full of deep personal messages and meanings. Everything is so placed, just at the moment I encounter it, that it communicates with me and asks me questions or gives answers, as if everything around me is scripted, all made just for me. I am the only real person in this reality. I lose more and more control and myself. I believe I have real superpowers, as if I have opened the developer console of reality and am randomly entering commands to unlock cheat codes and achieve ultimate God mode. Other people are mere shadows of their true selves projected into my reality client. They are like everything else scripted, bots, NPCs, shadow beings, and I can read their thoughts. And they too are only there to lead me to enlightenment, to divinity. Everything I do on a small scale affects the larger world out there. I can change world events with the smallest rituals. I am God. I must fulfill my mission and symbolically start a fire in which the whole world burns, and from the ashes, heaven will rise. Armageddon. My roommates, who wake up due to the strong smoke, are not very enthusiastic. However, thanks to my colleagues, I ended up in the hospital later that day and promptly in the closed ward. Thanks to strong medication, I calmed down quickly, and the months-long adventure of psychosis is over. Aftermath. A few weeks later, I was discharged. A few months later, the medications start working properly, and I realized that I experienced a psychosis. During my time in the clinic, I got to know many interesting people, but that's a topic for another post. Interestingly, it was the same clinic where Nietzsche died, and they even had a small museum about me. Well, Nietzsche. Well, since then, at least I know what a psychosis is, but I still can't explain all of that stuff to this day. Life goes on. Afterward, I remained stable for a few years until the psychiatrist wanted to completely discontinue my medication, and I became psychotic for the second time. The second psychosis was even more intense than the first, so if anyone is interested, maybe there will be another post about schizophrenia. In any case, now I've been stable for 8 years thanks to a better psychiatrist, and I'm able to work part-time and have something resembling a social life. The medication works wonders for me, but not without side effects, such as weight gain and general lack of motivation. So it literally makes me a fat sack and a basement dweller. However, I can counteract it to some extent so that a semi-normal life is possible. Conclusion. Psychosis and paranoid schizophrenia are fascinating, but they ruin one's whole life, so I wouldn't recommend it. My second psychosis. Preface. So far this was somewhat comprehensible, nicely packaged with a coherent thread into a little story. My second psychosis makes it more challenging. The whole experience was too chaotic and convoluted, filled with too many gaps in memory, and sometimes just too abstract to accurately convey in smooth, coherent sentences. So this will be a long and bumpy reading journey, filled with a lot of confusing nonsense. But if I'm already writing about psychosis, I want to represent it as accurately as possible, even if it may affect the readability. Prelude. Since I had gained a lot of weight due to medication, roughly 100 kilograms in 2 years, I brought up the possibility of changing my medication with my psychiatrist. However, he suggested that since I was doing so well mentally and had been stable for a while, we should consider completely discontinuing the medication. We slowly reduced the dosage, taking a few milligrams less of the antipsychotic every few months. It's something you can try, but it doesn't work for everyone. A few weeks after reaching the minimum dosage, things started again. The last time I saw this psychiatrist, I bid him farewell with a firm handshake and thanked him for the successful treatment because I was now healthy and would never need medication again. Instead of taking the bus or tram, I walked back, feeling almost euphoric, similar to when I was wandering the streets in a highly psychotic state. The thoughts from back then returned, that I was mentally super healthy, as mentally sharp as no one ever, chosen as a psychiatrist for this sick world where everyone is insane except for me, because I had the best psychiatrist in the world with whom I could talk day and night, and he was God, and I was God. Delusions. The delusions of the first psychosis were not without their quirks. However, the second one easily surpassed them and was significantly more intense. Sometimes it's difficult for me to find the right words because as soon as I turn it all into coherent sentences, it becomes too coherent for me to accurately describe the experience of this second psychosis. My thoughts, feelings, actions, delusions, and hallucinations were even wilder this time, sometimes very abstract, sometimes with significant memory gaps, all very fragmented and mixed up. And when wrapped in familiar concepts and words, it was already too smoothed out. Back then, my parents were the first to realize that something was wrong, because as a busy messiah, I stopped responding to their messages and calls. They reported me as missing, so I had early encounters with the friendly officers in blue. They came to see me and were relieved to find me in good spirits. I downplayed the situation and attributed it to my mother's anxiety disorder and schizophrenia, explaining that she was just worrying too much. After a friendly conversation, they left. However, in the coming months, I would have more interactions with the police. The voices in my head, which interacted with me as if by telepathy, had returned. I perceived them, as I often thought in computer metaphors, as source coders of reality, the puppeteers behind every form of causality that communicated with me through my surroundings, all through this special form of telepathy. It was as if someone were playing a harp on my brain, activating thought strands and communicating with me through myself. Later on, opposing forces to the motif of awakening from reality also came into play, trying to keep me in reality. I imagined these as demons that had popped up when I opened the console to reality, trying to prevent me from achieving my goal. Not out of malice, but more as an automatic function of the system to prevent a crash. Because as I looked beyond the GUON of reality, I frantically entered commands in the developer console of this reality operating system, my own reality client constantly connected to the God cloud. Mainly, I did this to unlock the cheat codes of the universe and ultimately enter God mode. To the big questions about the greater whole, the source coder voices always responded with the same concepts. I just had to wait long enough in a sluice gate, like a gateway, to reach heaven alive, to leave Earth and enter my personally created paradise. It would be like reality but in God mode in my own reality client. And from there, the same sluice gates would provide access to the actual paradise, still unimaginable but like a kind of shared open-world solution where all humans are gods and paradoxically coexist with their sometimes opposing omnipotent desires without interfering with each other in the God's heaven. Reference to delusion. Communication with me doesn't happen only through telepathy. No, everything communicates with me. There is only me and that which communicates with me, and nothing else in this reality. Just like in the Matrix, I am Neo, and my agent Smiths can transform into other people and control them to communicate with me. Or they can speak directly to me through the television, radio, street signs, billboards, basically anything I encounter. Everything speaks to me again with direct personal meaning and messages. Only I can decipher it, but there's no one else here. Not really. Just like in the Truman Show. The adventure. If I could remember accurately everything I experienced in reality and in my mind during those months, it would probably fill entire books. I'll limit myself to some highlights in this post. During that time, I had a strong urge to travel, and I often found myself in places where I didn't belong. However, the underlying motive throughout all of this time was to reach heaven alive through a world sluice. I often waited in various rooms, meditated for hours in the Burger King restroom, hoping that when I left the bathroom, I would be in heaven. Or I spent a few hours in the entrance hall of a building, urinating in the corridor in a foreign city because I urgently needed to use the restroom but couldn't find the way out. I also remember suddenly standing in the sleeping quarters of an unknown young woman who had just woken up and asked me to return her house keys. Or how I spent the night in civil defense bunkers, where the caretaker of some housing complex harassed me, thinking I was a burglar, even though I wasn't there to steal. I just wanted to get to heaven. New home, new happiness. When I asked my thought voices, the rulers of causality, the personifications of the underlying principles of cause and effect, to take me directly to heaven, they proposed a deal. I had to hand over my house keys to them in order to get new ones. If I managed to move into a new house this way, I would already be in heaven, with the new house being the mystical gateway between earthly reality and heaven. In short, I went outside and threw my keys into a random bush. Now I couldn't get into my apartment anymore. But it was just a 2-room apartment, messy, and I was looking forward to my new home. So the reality itself guided me to the new home. Somewhere in the affluent district of the city stood my new villa, and I just had to find it. The whole thing was like a treasure hunt. I checked every mailbox for my name, and if it was there, I should receive a key to stay in the house until I arrived in heaven. Soon enough, or maybe it was just a hallucination, I found a mailbox with my first name on it, but I couldn't find a key anywhere. So I tried to enter my house through the cat door. In vain. After a few hours in the front yard of this property, I gave up and moved on. However, in the evening, in the same spot, to my surprise, the police opened the door for me. They had been called by the concerned owner when he discovered signs of a break-in. They offered me a glass of water, which I drank gladly, and I sat in the living room with the police and the somewhat agitated residents of the house. I told them about my schizophrenia and that I would like to go to the clinic now. They agreed and drove me there, with a request to check in at the reception. I did that, had a little coffee chat with the psychiatrists, and then set off on more adventures. I still didn't have any house keys, and I stayed overnight in civil defense bunkers or elsewhere. After all, Jesus didn't have a fixed place of residence, and a true prophet or Messiah doesn't need one either because the world is their home. Or so I thought. This time, I walked again, but in a different part of the city, where beautiful houses were located. So I ended up at a mailbox with my name on it again, but this time it contained my new house key. My very own villa even came with a swimming pool, although it was too cold for swimming. I spent the night there and found more spare house keys. I lit a fire in the fireplace. The next morning I took a shower. Anxiously, I left the house because I should now be in heaven. But after just a few steps, the nice police officers approached me. They searched me but found only a pair of scissors, which I assured them I didn't carry as a weapon, but to open moving boxes because I was moving into my new house. They didn't believe me, and behind them was the real estate agent who was taking care of the vacant property. I owned multiple keys, and I insisted that this was my house. I couldn't present the deed because it was kept safely with my parents. After a lengthy back and forth, we went to the police station to clarify things. I waited in a cell and felt a bit tired, so I asked for a blanket and took a short nap. They just couldn't believe that those were my keys. They didn't believe that I had received them from God either. It was already evening when they drove me back to the clinic, this time kindly requesting that I stay there. I agreed, and after a long conversation with the night doctor there, I was offered a nice room to spend the night. But just as I was about to fall asleep, I felt the urgent need to get out. So, I sprinted out into the darkness, finding my way out of the clinic grounds and into the night, heading towards more madness. Fragments of memory. When I look back on that time, I often find myself in places where I shouldn't be and can't remember how or why I got there, or how to find my way back home. So I panickedly ran through the city from one point to another because I had caused a bug that only I could fix. If this glimpse wasn't eliminated, the entire multiverse, the whole system, would collapse, and it would all be my fault. To prevent the end of all existence, I had to balance it all again with fuzzy logic. No, it doesn't have to make sense, it's psychotic. I also thought about how 4chan, with its alphabetically organized boards, reflected the diversity of life and was the true Bible. Now I was in contact with my higher self, my future self, and my alternative selves from different timelines, all of them shouting at me in panic. I would hastily fix one bug only to create new problems elsewhere that I then had to solve, which led me to run from place to place, driven by a massive panic, fueled by the fear of non-existence itself. But I managed to fix it somehow, save the universe. You can thank me, but you don't have to. Visit from friends. On one evening, a few friends came over to my apartment. They didn't realize I was psychotic because this time I was acting like a regular person. However, if I followed my friends' subtle hints and played along with the system, I would find my way to heaven. They were created like demons to keep me on the right path. While we played video games or surfed on the internet together, I had visions of other gods like me, arranged in a three-dimensional chessboard pattern, talking to me in their own reality clients. So I wasn't entirely alone here, at least not for now. The Z virus. My psychosis started strongly and then intensified day by day, becoming more uncomfortable. After a few months, the Z virus came into play. If the source coders of reality are semi-conscious, highly complex mathematical constructs with a life of their own, a kind of artificial intelligence that reads my will and carries it out because I am still God, then the Z virus is the same but with the opposite will. For a reason I don't know now, it also comes from the future and projects itself from the end of time into this moment, right now, into my aching left foot. But then it jumps away and is suddenly in the wallpaper or in the light. I can only get rid of it, and I want to get rid of it because it is also responsible for my memory problems by tricking it and banishing it. For this, I let all the water run at full blast in the apartment because that cleanses. But that makes it really aggressive, And then it's at my apartment door, and I slam it shut, and the window shatters with shards in the entrance hall, and the neighbors call the police, and I greet the police with a 45-degree salute and shout, Heil Mao Tse-Tsun, because everything evil is this Z virus. I can't articulate myself anymore. My arm is bleeding from the glass shards. I literally spin in circles and make brrrr to confuse the virus. And this time, and now really big praise, the police officers are not fooled by me anymore, and they handcuff me and take me directly to the closed ward. Closed ward. Once there, I just want one thing, to get out. I may not be able to speak a straight sentence anymore, but I was sure to let the nice nurses know. With about 10 strong men, they try to prevent me from carrying out my immediate plans. But since I weigh 200 kilograms and am about 1.9 meters tall, more nurses from other departments are called in, and somehow they manage to corral me into the isolation cell. There, I receive a few injections of strong sedatives, administered directly into my buttocks. And that's the last thing I remember because I should be completely catatonic for the next 2 weeks, with no memories of that time. Aftermath. This time I spent not just a few weeks but several months in the clinic. I can share more about my time in the closed ward itself from when I come back to myself and have some control and my memory functions again, until my release, if desired. There were some funny characters and interesting stories to tell during that time. About a year after being discharged from the clinic, I was fit enough to return to work. It took much less time than after the first psychosis, which had incapacitated me for years, with me just sleeping all day long for years. In general, I was much fitter this time, probably because I was somewhat accustomed to it, especially the strong medications.
Been wondering what's been happening with my life recently. Just going to bullet point the major things that I experienced since all the weird shit started happening in my life. Ended up with prophetic dreams in 2020 that was about me finding the answer to 666 and the hidden truth of the world or some stupid shit the first day I moved in. I experienced a whole slew of other things along with it that is too much of a rabbit hole to explain. I then started to fuck around with dark concepts and stuff of the sort. I then had my spiritual journey take place to avoid becoming a part of an infinite cycle of hatred, as the bodhisattvas of a dream told me in some ethereal plane as the bad ending to life. I was very bad at it, since it was like cramming for an exam of multiple lifetimes in one lifetime. After both God and Jesus urging me to repent in very turbulent moments, I distracted myself to live a normal life on planet Earth. After New Year's in 2023, I started to have God open up my goddamn soul and show me visions of the other side. Before this month, I've never experienced this level of intensity in my entire life. Only downsides to it. It was all shit I didn't want to see about myself, or evil satanic shit that was traumatizing. Happened for about a month non-stop. Went delusional from the visions in Memorial Care Hospital, thinking some guy owned a pocket dimension that he was going to torment me in with a whole group of people. Schizo-ass memory. Was taken to recovery in a psych ward. I got better and lived normally until May hit in 2023. Ended up spiraling after some really sad shit happened. Told God in my soul to speak to his opposite, and signed a spiritual contract with Satan inside my soul. It's basically like I have two realities going on, one on Earth and one in the spirit world happening inside my soul. Ended up with a bunch of demons keeping me up at night, mainly dialogue between my soul and whatever they were on about. Had some entities scream at me from the great beyond and wake me the fuck up. Wasn't asleep, just lying down. Told my dad, he told me it wasn't real and to not focus on it. Then some succubus tempted me, and this went on for a long while of me trying to get answers from her. The demons then started to perform rituals in my house. Something about mass sacrifice and sermons of heresy was happening, IDK. Bottom line was that I got no sleep for like 3 days, and there was a bunch of evil shit happening in my house. Told my dad after like the 50th time that whatever was happening wasn't right. Unlike the other times, he sensed that something was wrong with the situation. My dad gave me the scariest look I've ever seen him give, and he tried to rebuke the spirits out of me. He lore dropped that he felt the presence that was a spirit who used to mess with him, his father, and his father's father. It apparently gave them apparitions and prophetic dreams about the end of the world. I'm not making any of this up, by the way. This is something I am actively contemplating in rehab as we speak, and I am only in here for drinking recklessly after this happened, otherwise I am clean. He said that there was a heaviness and darkness to the air in the house, and we decided to make a prayer to Saint Michael and cast out the spirits. Actually worked. The air got super lighter and there was a group of voices of upset spirits outside all at the instant we prayed. One spirit was calling out to me louder than the rest, and he kept yelling my name. Tried to tell my dad, but he kept telling me it was in my head. As he told me that, the voice yelled even louder, and my dad jolted, asking what that was. Tried to tell him I was trying to tell him what was happening. He just rationalized it off as something else, which was pissing me off. My dad asked if there was anything the spirit could latch onto in the house. I then told him about my journal that talked about how madness opened my eyes to truth, or some weird thing like that. Pick related. We destroyed the book and it enraged the spirit that was calling out to me. We made that thing together, Robert. Apparently that guy had some sort of tie to me or something. Tried to tell my dad about that, but he thought I just had schizophrenia. Told me that he was going to take me to that cursed-ass hospital, and when he said that, the spirit who was calling my name said, "I will see you there." Arrived at that same hospital as before with a spotlight aimed at our car from the parking garage, blinking as we came out of the car. It was really surreal. Then we enter the hospital and I tried to squeeze out the door past security, which looked really pathetic in retrospect. Then a similar voice called out to me. It was the same one that I heard at my house. Turned around and it's an actual dude that spoke to me in a really creepy way. "We are here to help you, Robert. No need to run away. We care about you." He talked to me 3 times, 2 times in that hospital nightmare schizophrenic episode tones, and the 3rd time he came in with 2 missionaries from the church. He changed his tone of voice this time and spoke like an asshole to me. "I lied to you, Robert. I don't actually care about you." Then he laughed at me as I was crying because I thought he was taking me to the pocket dimension next. He didn't take me to the pocket dimension, and I think he got fired from his job for the last part since I don't see him there anymore.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.